Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're tackling a really big question, one with huge financial stakes. When a marriage ends, what's actually yours to keep and what has to get shared? Okay, let's dive right in and make sense of it all. It's such a direct question, and frankly, a really scary one for a lot of people. You might think the answer is simple, but that line between mine and ours can get incredibly blurry fast. So, how do the courts even begin to sort this out? Well, it all boils down to two fundamental categories. Every single thing you own, your car, your savings, your furniture, is legally seen as going down one of two paths. It's either marital property or it's separate property. And trust me, understanding that difference is everything. So, first up, we have marital property. The easiest way to think about this is as the shared pot. This is basically anything that was earned, bought, or saved up by either of you while you were married. We're talking about income, the house you bought together, retirement accounts. It all goes into the shared pot, and this is what's on the table to be divided. Now, the other path is for separate property. These are the assets that belong to just one person, and they usually come from two main places. Things you already owned before you ever said I do, or specific things you received all on your own during the marriage, like a personal inheritance or a gift that was clearly meant just for you. And here, you can really see that difference side by side. Marital property, acquired during the marriage, and it's up for division. Separate property, acquired before the marriage, and it usually stays off the table completely. Think about it. The family home you bought together is on a totally different path than, say, that old car you've owned since you were in college. All right, so what kind of stuff typically starts out on that protected, separate path? Let's get a little more specific. So the list of what's usually considered separate is pretty straightforward. You've got assets from before you were married, gifts made specifically to you and you alone, an inheritance that was left only to you, and even some personal injury awards. And of course, anything that you both agreed would be separate in a prenup. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. In almost every case, these things only stay separate if you've kept them separate. And that brings us to the most critical twist in this whole story. This is the moment where an asset that you thought was protected and untouchable can suddenly become vulnerable and find its way right into that shared marital pot. The biggest danger here has a legal name, commingling, but let's make it simple. Imagine your inheritance money is a can of blue paint, and your shared marital money is a can of yellow paint. The second you pour that blue paint into the yellow paint, maybe by putting your inheritance into a joint bank account, you get green paint. It becomes almost impossible to ever prove which drops were originally blue. Legally, it's all just green now, and that means it's marital property. Now, there's another way this can happen, and it's through a process called transmutation. It sounds complicated, but this example makes it super clear. Let's say you owned a house before you got married. That's your separate property. But during the marriage, you decide to add your spouse's name to the deed. In that moment, you have legally transformed that house. You've sent a clear signal that you intend for it to be a shared marital asset. Okay, so after all those warnings, you're probably wondering, how do I actually keep my separate property, well, separate? Let's shift gears and look at the guidebook for how to build a practical strategy. Really, the best practices are all about creating a very clear financial boundary. Keep those separate assets in accounts that are only in your name. Try to avoid dipping into, say, your inheritance to pay for a joint family vacation. And paperwork. Paperwork is your absolute best friend. Keep clear records, bank statements, gift letters, deeds that prove where that asset came from. And of course, a prenup or a postnup can define all of this right from the start. Before we finish up, we have to look at the fine print. And this is really important because the rules are absolutely not the same everywhere you go. Where you live matters a lot. See, most states use a system called equitable distribution. The keyword there is equitable, which means fair. A judge aims for a fair split, but that might not be an exact 50-50. But some states are community property states. There, the starting point is that pretty much everything acquired during the marriage is owned equally, and it gets split 50-50. That's a huge difference in approach. So, the most important point is this. There is no one-size-fits-all answer. As this quote from our source material says so clearly, the exact rules depend heavily on where you live and, just as important, on how you've treated that asset over the years. This is precisely why getting professional legal advice for your specific situation isn't just a good idea, it's absolutely essential.
And that really leaves us with one final crucial question to think about. After everything we've looked at, the danger of commingling, the risk of transmutation, and the need for clear boundaries, it's worth taking a moment to ask yourself, are your assets really as separate as you think they are? Thanks for joining me.